everyone. Welcome back. I'm Monique Alvarez, and I'm super excited to be with Chris today. We're going to talk about when Chris learned about her blueprint and how it changed everything for her. So first off, Chris, welcome. And thank you for being willing to share your journey with us.
Of course. I'm always here to share our stories.
Absolutely. I'm going to make sure this is streaming over on Facebook. But while I do that, I want you to talk about how did you end up in Sacred Silver Linings? Because that's actually what led to us meeting. So how did that happen?
Yeah. It's interesting to me. It's one of those things where you have to connect the dots looking back. And I go back to it, and I was working with a coach at that time. And I remember I would always tell her, I'm your worst student. But I know we came together for a reason. And I don't know what that is, but I kept saying, I'm like your worst student. Now I go back and I connect the dots. And it was in a conversation that I was having with her and a couple other women. And one of the other ladies, we connected on social, like you do when you're in different groups. She shared Sacred Silver Linings. Hey, a friend is putting this book together. It spiked my interest. I had one conversation. I was like, I'm in. And everything went from there. Now I go back and it's like, this particular coach dissolved her business. And I knew right there that this was the reason that we were connected. For me to tap into something that's always been within me, but I never allowed myself to explore it, which was storytelling.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what's fascinating about that book, Chris, is that every collaboration book that we've done at Alma Publishing, I've got an idea. I've helped sort of direct the design team for the cover. And usually when it's the book idea that I get, I see the book through. But this book was very interesting because I had already pretty much stepped out of Alma Publishing. I was helping with the local business, but this book came to me in a dream. I helped create the cover, and then I disappeared, right? So you fast forward a few months. I think that book launched in the fall. The project I was working on fell apart in the fall. And I remember this one day, Derek said, Monique, you've got to get into the group chat. By this time, you had said yes to leading a book, yeah? So you went from writing a chapter and you said, I want to lead other people through this. So then you had become a book partner, and all the book partners were housed in this group chat. And Derek said, you need to get in there. Like, it's not going well. Can you go in there and kind of, sort things out? And I was very hesitant. I was having my own pity party. I was not really, I wasn't in a great mood. And I go in there, and after interacting for a few days, Derek asked me, how's it going? And I said, oh, it's all crap, right? I was like the worst mood ever. I go, but there's one really cool lady in there. She's got it. It's Chris. And he goes, well, what makes you say she's got it? And I was like, she just does. I just know she does. I like her. And all of a sudden, me wanting to be mad and disappointed and in my own pity party and not have anything to do with Alma Publishing, and definitely not want to get book partners on track. Like I just didn't care, honestly. All of a sudden, because of you in that group chat, I was hooked, and I stayed in the group chat and I kept talking, and we started getting to know each other. And one day I woke up and I heard, you've got to figure out Chris's human design. And you came in the group and you said, I'm a projector. And I don't know if you remember this, because I said it before. I thought, like, classic, right? Like that, like I've never done that. I said, oh my gosh, projectors hate me. Do you remember me saying that?
Not really.
Okay, good. And I've always had, up until that time, projectors would run from me. They just run from me. But as you know, being a manifesting generator and just like flying at the speed of light, and I'm here, and then before you know it, I'm over there, and I'm here and there. I can see why, right? It's exhausting for projectors to try to figure out where the heck that manifesting generator is going. But you were different once again. You were curious and you were intrigued, and you kept sort of following the conversation wherever it was going in this group chat. Do you remember what was the first thing that stood out to you when you read your profile in your human design?
Wow. A lot of things, but to me, it was more of the advisor role.
Yeah.
That really stood out to me because as I started reading it, as I started to understand, and it's huge, right? I don't think anyone's ever going to fully learn and understand everything in human design. But when I really read the projector, more of a excuse me, advisor role,
Mm-hmm.
it really resonated because that's the role I had been in corporate going up to 20 years. Now, to me, in corporate, it was just a title, but I was
Mm-hmm.
really good at what I did.
Yeah.
And the more I understood more of my design, the more I could see how it was all present. And I saw it through my corporate career. That's when it made sense. The things
Yeah.
that I was learning were being confirmed like, okay, well, it's not that I'm just like this overachiever. It's not that I'm just like to get myself involved in things and just make it work because I feel like I'm wasting my time with all these processes and procedures that are just outdated. I understood that it's just my way of being. Like, I don't like to waste my time. I see a way to do it better
Yep.
and I will put it out there. And so, getting to know a little bit of that, comparing it to what I already know about myself was a confirmation of like, okay, well, there's something here, but I still didn't fully tap into it. I was like, all right. And then when you
Yep.
threw out there, you start getting more into it and you kept telling me, you have to wait for an invitation. You have to wait for an invitation. I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. Screw it. I don't understand.
Yeah. I think it's pretty typical. Like when I first learned about my human design, I remember this she was my friend Helen. She was throwing all this information at me, and it was just like most of it was going right over my head. It was like another language. I didn't quite get it. Every now and again she'd throw something out and I go, yep, that's me. And but it took years. I've been in my human design now for God, like 9 years, and it's layers. You do it in layers. Yeah. So when after I figured, okay, well, Chris is going to be out of here pretty soon because I'm going to drive her nuts. The next thing that stood out to me was number one, she cannot try to promote her book the way that I promoted books. She can't try to behave like I behave because as a projector and a manifesting generator, like those are, night and day. So I knew I have to give her different ways to promote this project, number one. Otherwise, I knew I was setting you up for failure. And this is what I love about human design. Before when I would consult clients and I didn't know their human design, I could very easily take them down the wrong path, give them things that were not at all going to be right for them and definitely not going to work for them. But there was a part that really stood out to me is when we looked at your 3-5, and I was like, oh, she's got the line 5. Okay. So for those of you who know human design, right? So I'm the 5-1, you're the 3-5. I've got a son that's 3-5. I got a projector son. So I was like, oh my gosh, Chris is like, I've got Sam and Grant right here in one person. And that also intrigued me because I got to know my sons, as you know, very well by getting to know you. So when I said, Chris, you got to wait for the invitation, and I know every projector initially hates that. I mean, it pissed me off when somebody told me you got to respond to life, you can't initiate. And it's like, what? You don't know me. I make things happen. Thank you very much. Right?
Right,
and
right.
and you're a person who you're used to making things happen. You see things, you improve it, boom, it's done. What else are we doing? Right?
Right.
So we have talked almost every day for what, a year and a half?
Going on, if not already.
Yeah, because I think that this was around the holidays, not this year, but the year before. And funny enough, it's like what you said at the beginning. The reason that we came together, how things were supposed to work out, none of that worked out. And you were the person in that whole group of book partners that you're the reason why I was put in that group chat. You're the reason why I came back. And ultimately, I don't know if you know this or if I've even said this to you, you're the reason I came back in the business. You helped me see, okay, she gets me. This is someone I can connect with, and you just like in a projector way, just ever so gently, you just know how to bring us in. Yeah. And to advise us. I mean, I don't know how many times you've advised me, and it's like, okay, yep, you're right. So as you went through and you started considering this idea of the invitation, like you have to have the visibility, but you got to have the invitation, and you've got to honor yourself, but then they've got to recognize you. You filled up your book, which, by the way, no one else in that group chat did. I don't know if you realize that. The projector did. The projector got it done. And I think that a lot of projectors, when they find out, they kind of wonder if they could be successful in online business, because it's a very sort of fast-paced world. What did you learn in that process of filling out your book?
That I got to do it my way and not somebody else's. And that didn't happen very quickly. I remember those messages where you would just like, and I would just start laughing. I mean, not at what you were saying, but it's like, why is she telling me this again? Like, she already told me 3 times, and I think it was just seeing the way things had always been done before, where they give you this strategy and you want to make it work, and you wonder why it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because it doesn't work for you personally. And I think that was the biggest thing. And that's why I kept going back and forth. And I guess having you in my ear and in my corner to like overly emphasize that's not the way it works for you. But I'm like, what does she know? Or you knew something I didn't know, right? And it was just that leaning in and going back and forth. I mean, ultimately the book got filled, it was launched, it was successful. It left me wanting more, but there was still that piece of doing it my way. Because what I learned over the course of months, I guess you could say, because you said, we've been chatting here for a very long time, is that as much as I was ignoring, and I'm going to say ignoring human design because it just felt complicated. And I'm like, I'll just take whatever bits of information you give me, but I'm not going to go into it because God knows I won't understand it. Well, that's because I was choosing not to understand it. But when I leaned in, it was like, it makes sense. Like and I'm sure you can identify the moment where it was like, I just hit pause and I'm like, something is not working for me here and I need to figure it out. And I went all in, and it was like everything was making sense. Like, I am feeling this way because things are out of alignment. Why are they out of alignment? Because I'm trying to do it somebody else's way and not my way, because I'm exhausting myself trying to, and I'll be honest, like trying to keep up with you. Where I was like, I'm not really exhausting myself. Yeah, you are, Chris.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the truth, right? Projectors often, they feel so exhausted. Why? Because they're looking around. You're only 1% of the population. You're looking around at how everybody else is doing it. And you go, well, I guess this is how we have to do it. I better lace up my tennis shoes and run, right? And then I would send you a message and I'd say, hey, Chris, have you rested today? Have you done nothing today? And then it became this joke, like, maybe you should go sit in the hammock. Maybe you should go sit in the tub. And so you'd be like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going to go have my hammock time. But what I realized is that you had been very well trained in corporate. You had been very well trained to look around. And this is how all projectors kind of fall into it, because if most of the world is doing it a certain way and it seems to be working for them, it's really hard to come to the conclusion that, no, I need to do it an entirely different way. But I remember that there was a day and then it was a period. And I would literally send you a message and I'd say, Chris, don't work more than an hour today. Like, Chris, call it a day. And then when we were overlapped and collaborating on projects, you'd send me a message and you go, I hope you feel like I'm pulling my weight. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you pulling your weight is when you don't get on social media, when you don't come in here, when you're not working, right? And actually, you helped me create a motto for Sam, because I see Sam always trying to keep up, right? I can see he's tired. He's yawning. He's got dark circles. The poor kid's tired. And you helped me create a saying for projectors in general is rest, because when you show up, you move mountains. You accomplish so much in a short amount of time. So when you dove all the way in, did you begin to appreciate the way you work versus how others work?
Yes. Yes. And to me, it's evolving, right? I mean, the more you dig, the more it's like, oh gosh, now what? But it continues to fine tune, and it raises my awareness on one, things that I already know, but it's like, now I understand why. And maybe also the areas where it's like, people have always told me this about me, but I've never been able to see it. That's been another big one, because I remember for years, I mean, my husband would be one to confirm. It's like, what do people see? Like, what are they seeing in me that I'm not seeing, that I cannot see? And now that's visible to me. Oh, I see what it is now. I just have to own it.
Yes. That's it. This is one of the biggest aha breakthroughs, I believe, for projectors, is there's a difference in waiting for the invitation of, hey, I'd like to learn more about what you're offering, or I'd love to have you on my podcast, or I'd love for you to speak. There's a difference in waiting for the invitation for that and acknowledging who you are and what you bring to the table. And projectors will often feel totally unnoticed, overlooked, underappreciated, until they can acknowledge it in themselves. And then it's almost as if every single person now got the memo, just like that.
Because it doesn't matter what other people think. It starts within. And that's the biggest part. Not just for projectors, for everyone.
Yeah, it's the truth. It's like whenever you figure out what your design is and you can go, oh, this is me. This isn't what I learned to do. This is actually just I came being good at that. Like, this is just who I am. Okay, so I remember you're having all these discoveries about yourself and connecting dots, and okay, and this is how I'm going to be in the world. And then you're like, I'm going to look at my husband. And then we find out your husband's a protector.
Yes.
And then you kept going.
I kept going. And I found out that my twin daughters are also projectors. And then my son is a manifester, right? And that helped me in so many ways. And as I continued to dig, right? Like, I started with my husband and I didn't even tell him, I was just like, let me just check these things out. And I was checking everything out, right? But when you start to look at the bigger picture, and he and I are in this just beautiful space in life where, this beautiful awakening, from a spiritual awakening, from just learning about ourselves individually, collectively, as a family. It's just, we've opened up to a lot of different things and ways of seeing life. And so I'm tapping over here into human design, right? But then, and I'm always like the one to be like, hey, come check it out. Slowly. but it's like, we also did, we had our astrological card read, and he's like, I just did it because you were ranting and raving about it. But when he got that reading, it was like so impactful. And
Mm.
then later, I started to bring in like, hey, check this out, kind of telling him about uh his human design and his chart and everything. And he was just like, oh my gosh, yes, that's true. And we just kept digging slowly, right? And then I start to tap into more my son than my daughters because I feel like uh, I don't even know how I'm gonna tap into theirs. I have a general idea, but because they're identical twins, born 1 minute apart, everything on the surface looks the same, but it's not the same. I mean,
Mm.
it's like a yin and yang. That's how it was best described to me. So, I know that one's gonna take a little bit more time, but I know at a surface, like, oh my goodness, I see it, I take a step back, and I see how it all is coming together. With my husband, it allowed me to understand so much more of him and why he responds in certain ways.
Mhm.
Um, oh, let me tell you, he honors his rest. I always tell him that. But it's beautiful because he might have that awareness about himself that I didn't, where he knows that's necessary. But now I don't necessarily judge, right?
Right.
No judgment, but in my past life,
Right.
maybe there was a little bit of that. But just even seeing how he is so passionate about learning about himself, about learning certain topics. And when I look at his profile and I'm just like, well, it makes sense. You have to like he's a 1-3. So it's like you have to dig, 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 dig. You never feel like you know enough. And I'm like, if you only listen to yourself, you just have a way of speaking to people, simplifying things where they just get it, right? And I just kept digging in it. And then I go into, with my son, and I'm like, okay, I remember telling you, oh my gosh, we have a manifestor living in a house with 4 projectors. I mean, I'm wondering how we haven't driven him crazy.
Right. I know. I'll never forget that day. I was like, "Oh dear God, bless this boy's heart." Right? He must feel like he's moving at the speed of molasses. And there was so much in his chart that helped you navigate, school and him being able to initiate and him being able to decide. Because for a manifester, I mean, they're the only ones who initiate, right? They're the ones who get the party started. And I know that was there were things in life that were showing you, okay, I something's off in how we're approaching him, right? There was some misalignment. He was not as fulfilled. He was a little frustrated. He was bored. Honestly, he's probably just bored.
Yes.
And so
And
you were able to apply it.
yeah, and I think, digging into his design and, I haven't gone in full in, but the areas that have really helped me is just really and this is kind of a twofold, right? Almost like as a parent, seeing the damage that I've done, if that even makes sense, and how me imposing my ways just, he's 15 now, so imagine like 14 years of this, of me parenting in a way that I knew before I knew what I know now. Parenting from a place of survival, because that was a space that I was in for so long. Parenting, a first time mom, with what I knew. I remember him as a child, how friendly he was, the one that would go out and in the playground and invite the kids and be talkative to where he's at today. And I know a lot of that is just the evolution of a person, right? Teenage years are not easy and all that. But now I could see how in those critical moments, years of his life, in any kid's life, where they get all the programming that determine like those first 6, 7, 8 years of life where they're being programmed by us. They're being programmed by society. Those years have shaped who they are today. And now I can go back and see how I tell my husband, like, man, how can we repair the damage? But it's not damage, it's what every person had to experience in their lifetime. It's what we have to experience, you know? And so I look at that period of time when I was in a different space that I am today, how that shaped who he is today. And now, how can I help him really bring out who he is? I remember sitting there one day because I know he gets bored out of his mind at school and he does not enjoy it. And he's asked for different options. And I'm like, how I can't do these other options. But then it's like, just keep digging, Chris, you know? And being able to sit with him and say, look, if you want to explore these options, we're going to support you. We're going to have meetings. We're going to figure out, you know, what the options really are. I want you to understand them so you can then make a decision if that is indeed the right option for you. He wanted to be homeschooled. And I'm like, honey, no. Like when I think homeschool, I think of mom sitting there with their child teaching them. But that's not all that there is available. Obviously, I had never tapped into, I never looked into it. But I said, let's look at the options. And just having a meeting with the school, sitting, talking about all the different type of options, what they're willing to do. It's like, show me. It was basically, the conversation was, show us that what you want is really what you really want. We'll test it. We'll allow, if you can do it, we'll allow you. I don't know how it's going to unfold, but I can tell you that him having the ability to pave the way with that flexibility, I want to see what it's going to be like. Is he going to truly shine because it's what he proposed? Or is it just one of those things like, okay, I did it. I tried it. It didn't work. Okay, carry on. But he had that option versus me cutting it off just at the first conversation like I did the first time before I knew what I know about him.
Yeah. Which I think is so dynamic because, like you said, you're helping him be able to be who he is, be able to communicate what he's wanting, what he's actually, even if we're just trying it on, even if we're just going to check it out, right? At least he gets to feel like he's part of this decision-making process and that he gets to have a say in what might be more exciting, more interesting for him to finish his high school years, And I think that that's setting him up for a totally different experience post-high school as well.
Sure, because if you are not excited about what you're doing, like how can you even show up?
Yeah.
I have a brilliant boy where like I sit there and I'm like, okay, buddy, let's just get this done. And I'm asking him questions and I mean, he knows his stuff. He's just not excited because it's not, I get it. The school system has not changed in decades, but we still expect our children to go and to sit there in a classroom with come home with homework and now glued to a computer. It does not work like that.
Yeah.
And that's a system that hasn't evolved with humanity, is what I'm going to say.
That's true.
And we had to be open up to say, okay, and we've told him like, buddy, just get through high school. If you want to go to college, then get the grades that you're going to need to get to college. But if you choose not to, I don't care. As long as you're doing what you love. And that's going to look different and you're going to have to try different things. And we're going to support you. We're going to support you. And I remember when he turned around and said, does that mean I can invest in anything I want? And I said, well, we'll just see what that is. Because we said, hey, look, we're going to try things out. But I also want you to think of what are the things that excite you? What are the things that light you up? What are the things that you want to try out? Those are the things we want you to entertain instead of sitting behind a screen playing video games because you're bored off your mind and that's the only thing that's entertaining you.
Yep.
And having those type of conversations, I see just the difference in his presence.
Mm-hmm.
School is still school. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to get him excited about that, other than giving him a little bit of say on what he wants to try out. But it's, man, it's just beautiful to me how I am able to navigate some of those things. And it's not always going to be right. We're not going to be right. It just helps me better parent.
Yep.
I see my daughters and they're like projectors. Okay, well, whew, bless their heart. But I could see now they're just like, I'm the type of like, tell me what to do and I'll get it done. Like, and I could see it's like chores. If I tell them these are the things you have to do, they get things done. They know what they have to do and they carry on. I tell my son what to do, he'll find every reason not to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's like once you have their information, once you have their blueprint, you can approach it differently. It's fascinating. And I think that thing that you just said, so Derek and I were having this conversation. I feel like this has been such a breakthrough for us with the boys because, it's easy for us to go, okay, they're 12 months apart, basically, whatever works for one, we're just going to do for all. But the approach, right? So it's like, instead of this is how I would do it, this is how I did it, this is how my parents did it, so this is how you're going to do it, or this is just the plan, where kids just sort of receive the orders from on high, right? Versus the conversation, versus, okay, how would they experience this differently if I approached it like this? I would be the first to say it takes more effort, it takes more energy, it takes more time initially to do this. Okay. I can be a dictator and it will be a lot easier. Get your socks and shoes on, we're going. Like, I don't want to have a conversation about it, right? But approaching them through their blueprint completely changes the relationship. And I think you said this, it changes, like, you can see their demeanor, their body language, who they are. They're walking differently. It's kind of like when you were able to acknowledge, oh my gosh, I can see now, I can see myself for who I am. They, at a young age, can begin to see themselves for who they are. And I mean, imagine having that from, 10, 15, however years old. It's different. It's different than we had. We didn't get that, right? We had to, we're in our 40s figuring out who we are. So you've got, and then, after we did human design, then it's like, okay, Chris, what's your life path number, which was so perfect because you're the 6, you're the heart of the operation. I'm the mouth of the operation, we'd come together. Figuring out the Chinese zodiac, and okay, which, by the way, I had a thought this morning. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. You don't have to. Okay. Well, let me see here. How should I say this? I was curious of what personal number you're in this year. So if we took your birth month and your birthday and then added it with 2025, what number do you get? I won't make you say your birthday on the interweb because, there's probably jackholes on here too.
So, and month, date, and current year?
Yes, month, day, and current year.
7.
Okay, perfect. So this is, another aspect of, your life path number. So like for you, Chris, a life path 6, a classic life path 6 who's in alignment with who they are, because I always say this all the time, like this information, yes, it's here, but there's a difference between when you're in alignment with it, as you now know, right? You can be a projector and you can be out of alignment. So life path 6, who's in alignment, the highest value you have in this lifetime is family. Okay, so a life path 6 that does not get married and does not have children and does not have a family, an extended family, they're not ever going to quite feel fulfilled. There's always going to be kind of a hole, a gap, because this is the core. Yeah, this is the core. This is the center spoke. And so you nailed that. Bravo, by the way. And you're an amazing mom, and I know you're always, you're getting the family together for dinners, and I see this life path 6 come through for you. You're the heart of the home, and you brought all this together. So since your birthday, right? Because your birthday was in July.
Coming up in July. Mm-hmm.
July, yeah. So since your last birthday, no, actually, I'm doing this wrong. So back up, because see, I always get confused when your birthday's in the middle of the year. Mine is like at the end, so it's kind of all the same. Okay, so what is this going to be for your next birthday? So if 7 is all about this spiritual quest, this introspection, mm-hmm. which you've been on, right? And mm-hmm. what I find too is people often can kind of feel that next personal year coming even before it is fully upon them. And what I find too is knowing the personal year just helps me know what's the focus for this year. What's the most important thing for this year? Because what I find is like when we're flowing with who we are, when you're flowing as a projector, when you're honoring your stuff, yourself, but then you're also in the energy of what the theme is for this year, everything is going to be easier. It's like things fall together a lot more than when you're trying to go against the grain. I find that when people try to focus on making money in a year when they need to focus on their spiritual route, or they're focused on their business when they should be focused on their family, it's like, I'll tell you, essentially what happens is everything's hard. Nothing really works. And most of the time they get sick. And this is how it will manifest, right? Mm-hmm. So what would you say has been one of the biggest, I know we've talked about it so much, but what is the difference in terms of what does it feel like to honor who you are versus before when you were sort of honoring how you had been trained to be?
It feels lighter. I think that's a way to describe it. It feels like I am living in alignment. And it's actually easier for me to detect when things are falling out of alignment. And I think that's been one of the bigger things in the recent months. It's identifying when things are off, but then doing something about it. Because in the past, I may have known something was off and not really been able to identify what, going back, way back. But now it's like I sit with it. I know exactly where it's coming from, but then it's choosing to do something about it, even when I don't know what the outcome's going to be. Mm-hmm. And I say that because I've had to do that. I've had to say, this feels off right now. Let's hit pause until we're vibrating at the same frequency, or I just need to hit pause and honor who I am. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes that comes with questions of maybe I chose to speak up and honor my truth. And, maybe a feeling of like, why do I have to defend myself for honoring who I am? So really is in those moments that I'm pausing to acknowledge my own desires in that moment, to identify, maybe I know right away what that next step is. Maybe I don't. Maybe I still need to sit in that pause to allow it to really come through. Yeah. That's what I've noticed also, that sometimes the answers are not just sitting right in front of me right away. Sometimes they are. but let me just sit with it. I know there's a misalignment here. Let me sit with it to really reassess, recalibrate, and
Mhm.
just identify what that pivot is going to look like. Doesn't mean it ends here. It just means, what is it going to look like moving forward so that I feel good about it? Because if I don't feel good, then that's where the resentment comes in, the bitterness, the this and the that. That now, in retrospect, I can identify when I was feeling like that and I did nothing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about, we all know when something is feeling off, and we can notice it when it's 1 degree off, like you said, pause, do something about it, course correct, versus something's off. You know what? I'm just going to keep plowing through. I'm just going to, until it's so off that something major has to happen, right? It has to,
Mhm. Mhm.
because when we get really off something, and that is the difference, is being able to catch it sooner, to not override it, to not ignore it, to trust yourself enough to go, nope, it's not supposed to feel this way.
And that's one of the things I love to, when I'm working with clients or when I'm talking to people, it's like you don't realize the impact of being misaligned in one area, what it does to all the other areas of your life because it spills over. And I'm saying this and I'm thinking about my husband. This man, I swear, sometimes he says things that it's like, okay, you know. Yesterday, in the middle of a conversation, how did he say it? Um, I'm gonna forget his exact words, but he was like, "Do you feel like you put your negative energy onto others, or something like you take it off on others when you're not in the right energy? Like, do you feel like you take it off on others?" And
Mm.
I'm like, "Why are you asking a question you already know the answer to?" Oh, why are you even asking? And he's like, "'Cause I want to hear you, I want you to hear yourself say it so you can acknowledge it." And I was like, "Yes, I do." And I say it, yeah, I notice when my energy's off and I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like this little crabby mom. Who am I taking it out on? Like, I'm taking it out on my kids. On Tuesday, one of my daughters was like, "Oh, mom needs a hug. Mom needs a hug, guys." And they were doing their infusions. She was sitting down. She's like, "I'm sitting down. I can't, but mom needs a hug." That right there put me on check. And it was like, okay, I am feeling off in one area. And now I'm projecting it to them. I wasn't telling her anything, but she noticed
Yeah.
and she identified it. And to me, and then a couple days later, I'm sure that's why my husband put that question. And he's like, "Look, Chris, like, I don't care. I'm just like, I'm an adult. I'm just like, whatever, let her do her thing." But for kids, that will impact them because they don't
Mhm.
know how to control their feelings. And I'm just like, "Well, and that's why I love you, because you just, bring things out, And he's really good at that. He's really good about, just bringing a level of awareness to me sometimes that I probably needed in that moment.
Mm. Yeah, I think what you said is true. It's like catching it and being aware of, this is impacting our kids. This is, they're feeling it. They feel it. They notice one thing in the environment. They notice one thing in the tone, in the whatever. Yeah, and it's true. It's like, okay, this is it's swirling now. And so what am I going to do about it? And what I have noticed is, when families begin to learn about their human design, and when we understand each other on a deeper level, we actually can help each other, like be the better version of ourselves. You know what? This is what's going on, even down to the smaller details. Like, I know that we looked at your ideal environment. Like, you and I both have that marketplace environment. And I think, we've talked about that. Like I realized one day, I told you, oh my gosh, this is why I've been in a bad freaking mood. Like, I'm living in the middle of nowhere and I get my most inspired ideas in this marketplace. I can't find a freaking marketplace, right? It's like half the time I can't even find a coffee shop that's open, and people just, it's like doesn't exist here, right? And it's funny you say it, because one day, this was probably like 3 months ago, Sam goes, I think we need to go on a trip. Mom's bored. She needs to go. She needs to go have fun.
But it's interesting, right? Because I don't sit there and tell my kids, oh, human design or this or that or the other. I really don't. But guess what? The conversations that we're having at the dinner table, the conversations they overhear my husband and I having are impactful.
Yes.
I mean, and the older they get, the more they tune in, because sometimes half the stuff we're saying, it doesn't even make sense to him, because we're like, woo, in our spiritual era over here. But the older they get and they're tuning in a little bit more and they're getting curious, which is the main thing. Like, I told my son, hey, do you want me to pull your astrological card? Do you want to know about it? He's like, sounds interesting. I think so. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do that this summer. Right.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's having conversations that are going to benefit them. And most of our conversations are around the dinner table, whether they're sitting there or they get up because they get bored, they're still listening.
Yes.
They're still listening, and being able to see their parents have dynamic conversations, be vulnerable in front of each other, say things that get us emotional, and be okay with that, gives them permission to do it as well.
It does. It does. And I'm so glad you said this, Chris. Also, I just want to say this. This was, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, at the dinner table. And Derek apologized to one of them for something. And he's like, I'm sorry I did that. I didn't realize that this had happened before. So now your response makes more sense to me. And Derek and I were talking afterwards, and he said, I never have a single memory of my parents apologizing to anybody. And like having different conversations than what we grew up with, having more depth, being more real, being vulnerable, apologizing when we're wrong, making things right when we're off. We got off and then we made everything else go off. This is how families and marriages and kids, this is what it can look like now. And I think it's amazing. It's very, very different. Well, I know that we're going to continue the conversation. And I want to invite anyone who doesn't know their blueprint, you don't know your human design, your Chinese zodiac, all your things, your life path number, your numerology, all the things. I invite you to get your blueprint, because it will change the way you see yourself. And what I've noticed, Chris, in doing these blueprints, I did a bunch this week. I'm losing my voice, so I talk too much, is that it's exactly what you talked about. People have this aha moment when it's like, I can now completely acknowledge what I've had hints about, what I've sort of suspected, there have been some people who've reflected it back to me, but like, it's this, oh my gosh, this is me. I know, Chris, we're going to continue the conversation, because we realized, I told you I had this aha moment yesterday, that I think we've been on parallel paths of changing our way of being. You had your corporate way of being. I had my running a business way of being, and life took us out of our environment and slowed us down long enough so that we could stop moving in default, stop being in the habit that we were so trained to be. It's sort of like I kept taking the spoon out of your right hand and I kept putting it in the left hand, every time I'd be like, nope, don't, that's how I promote. You don't promote. I think we both were going through this process when life was trying to say, there's another way to do it. And we're going to talk about what that has looked like and how it has completely changed the way we approach everything. from work to family to ourselves, how we take care of ourselves. So we're going to continue that conversation. We're going to talk about it's going to be perfect. We actually could not have planned this better. We're going to talk about the book Sacred Redesign. I told you I had not been ready to talk about that book. I had been working on other things in the business, figuring out what I wanted to do. And what I realized is, and I say this to every book partner, whatever book you decide to lead, it does the work in you first.
Mm-hmm.
That book has something to do in you first. And this book definitely had something to do in us first. And now we get to bring it to others. So we'll continue the conversation. Thank you, Chris, for taking the time to talk about your journey, embracing yourself, aligning your life. It doesn't have to be exhausting. You don't have to act like all the rest of us crazy people. You can be yourself, and you get to approach family totally different, right? Honoring your kids, who they are, honoring your husband and who he is. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for just this time. And I know this is just like one conversation. So for whoever is tuning in, whenever you catch this video, I mean, go follow Monique, go follow me, watch how we live and show up. You're going to see the big difference right off the bat. Monique is like, you may not see as much as me, right? But go and follow and study and observe people, because that's where you get to see things play out. So it's an invitation for people to go and follow you, go follow me, and continue to learn, because I know we've had multiple conversations, we've shown up here, but the conversations are only going to get better.
Absolutely. We're gonna continue it. You're stuck with us. That's basically what we're saying. All right. Have an amazing rest of your Thursday. Until next time, you know what? Aligning to who you are, living your life that way. Chris said it. It can actually be very scary because it leads you into the unknown. And we all love the devil we know more than the devil we don't. But I will tell you, Chris and I, it has not been an easy year and a half for us. However, the rewards are definitely worth it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.